This is an SM Media production. Hi, folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the SM Media Pro Wrestling Show. I'm Scott McPike. It's a pleasure, as always, to be with you, and I'm joined, as always, by Scott Young. Scott's pleasure, mate. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, Scott. Cheers for looking forward to this one. There's a lot to go into. Let's put it that
Yeah,
way.
yeah, you'll have seen by the title description, we're going to play a wee game of what ifs. We're going to do three what ifs each of how the wrestling world would have changed if these things had went ahead instead of what had happened in real life. But I think we'd be remiss to talk about some of the big news that's been happening over the past week or so, Scott. Obviously, we're recording this just after Hard to Kill and the New Japan show. We'll touch on that in a wee minute. But start of the week, if you were on Twitter, you would have got a good laugh out of this. Obviously, it's been reported. Well, it's been confirmed that Seth Rollins will face Jinder Mahal for the World Heavyweight Championship on Raw on Monday, and this didn't sit well with a certain AEW owner, Tony Khan, owner, CEO, head of creative, whatever, president, head baggage carrier. I don't know, but he didn't take well to this. He reported. Well, he made a wee argument about the double standards. We're talking about Hook and Samoa Joe on Wednesday for the W title, which I'm quite looking forward to actually. But Tony Khan again, Scott, and I think you're more lenient towards him than I am. I just think he's an absolute child, and this is the sort of reason why he just needs to stay off social media because I think he's probably as good as anybody in the business at promoting what's in his show, but he does it 40, 50 times a day, so he should be. But this is the sort of thing he's never going to win because he does just look like a child.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna be the pro Tony Khan side, and then I'll take your. And then I get what you said. Is he wrong? But
He's not wrong,
when you think about it,
but he's never going to
exactly.
win the
But I
argument.
don't. But he's not going to be angry. But I don't think he's wrong. And I think as an owner, it should be his prerogative to stick up for his wrestlers and his own business where he's getting criticism that he feels isn't justified. But on the other hand, leave that kind of stuff to the fans.
Yeah.
I think that's the stuff that me and you should be talking about rather than him. But I get why he thinks that. But then I also think I don't see him. Obviously, we're big football fans. I don't see him doing it with that Fulham, for example. Like yesterday, Chelsea should have got a man sent off against Fulham, but I don't see Tony Khan tweeting about the double standard in VAR. Is it because I don't know? I don't know why he chooses AEW to. Is it to stoke the fire in American tribalism? Is it an easy way to promote Dynamite?
Or
Because
is
I don't
it
think Fulham needs promoted.
is it a thing of
I
that
think
he is so caught up and that he does have a core audience now. He does have a core audience who are so pro AEW and anti WWE. I get that, but it's not enough to win an argument like that. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
and whether you like Jinder Mahal or not, and to be honest, the past couple of weeks he's probably been more relevant than he has in probably 7 years. But if you put on a card, Jinder Mahal, former WWE champion, is challenging for the World Heavyweight Championship to a fan who's never watched wrestling in his life, or if you look at Wednesday's Dynamite, where it's going to be young up and comer who gets his first shot at a World Championship against Samoa Joe. I know as a not a wrestling fan, which I think I would always be trying to get them in because you're going to get your core audience in no matter what. I know where I'm going, so I don't get
Mm.
what he's doing there. Is he just trying to fuel a fire that a few guys on Twitter will jump on, which they have? But the other side of it is he'll make a big deal about this. And fair play to him, he'll stick by a point. But how many times in the past few weeks has he been asked questions about other serious things? I can't comment on that. I'm not going to talk about that. So you need to be a responsible owner, in my opinion. I love a Twitter argument as much as anybody, but I'll make sure that I know I can win it. which he's never going to win an argument like that because he just looks like a child. And the
Your
USA
point about
Network.
stuff he can't. Sorry. I think the stuff you said that you're not allowed to talk about is, I think that's a different point because he legally can't. Like the CM Punk stuff, he legally can't talk about it because everyone's under several NDAs, apart from Jericho, obviously. But he legally can't talk about that kind of stuff. And I do think he has been a bit of I think you use the word child. I don't know. I think that might be a bit harsh, but I do think he's being, like we heard Brian Alvarez this week say that the stuff's been, I think some of the people backstage have found it embarrassing, the kind of stuff he's been saying.
Yeah. And
so I think he's not even winning an argument within his own company. And also, he somehow made Jinder Mahal the biggest babyface in wrestling. I don't know how he's managed that.
Yeah.
Everyone wants Jinder to win now, just for a laugh, because he's Jinder.
And it wouldn't be out with the realms of possibility, because that's how Jinder won the title in the first place, being the biggest underdog we thought we'd see. But the problem he's got is that we're not going to be talking about. I wouldn't be surprised on Monday night if there's a dig made about him, and that's not. I don't think that's good for him. You could look at that and go, is that good for publicity if he gets mentioned on a show which is drawing a higher rating? Not if he's been mentioned as the lack of a better term, a moron, which is what he's going to be. What a lot of people in the wrestling world do think of him. He's 20.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I'm 27. Tony Khan's 41, and I know for a fact I would be far more mature running a wrestling company than he would. That's not a good sign.
Michael Cole's gonna have a field day Monday. I can't wait for Michael Cole Monday. He's gonna be late time. So him the stuff about the Ariel Helwani as well, calling him the very unbiased journalist or something like that, after Tony Khan called him incredibly biased.
But there's another point as well. Tony Khan set that interview up, and then have you ever watched that interview?
It's not. It's the most awkward interview I've ever watched in my life.
But it looks even more awkward when you the fact that Ariel Helwani asked him several times and he didn't want to do it, and then he set it up, and then just sat there and said literally nothing. So you have to wonder, what's he doing?
Ariel Helwani is the kind of guy who's gonna ask tough questions. He always has. That's why a lot of the UFC fighters don't like him.
Mm-hmm.
Paddy the Baddy, for example, I know hates Ariel Helwani. Aye. Dana White doesn't like him. Paddy the Baddy hates him because he asks tough questions. So if you could sit in an interview with Ariel Helwani, not 2 weeks to 3 weeks after Brawl Out, he's going to ask about it. So surely you know what's going to happen with it. But yeah, I think just be back on Pro Tony side, I think it's quite funny. When I read that and sent you, I had a great time. But he's been serious about it as well. He's not doing it for a laugh.
And it's that Donald Trump thing, isn't it? Is he sitting on Twitter all night just thinking, right, how can I make myself relevant? But you're not actually doing yourself any favours. You're just making it. Do you know what I mean? That every morning under Donald Trump, you were waking up and thinking, what the hell has he said now? And the argument from the pro-Trump side was, right, he's saying that he's staying relevant. People are going to be talking about him the next day. I don't get that, because I don't want to be talked about in a negative way every day, which is what Tony Khan seems to get when he does things like this. Just shut up. I mean, I go back to Jamie Carragher. Jamie Carragher laid into him because he said something stupid in Twitter about Fulham about 3 years ago, and that was probably him thinking, right, he's going to get mentioned in Monday Night Football. It wasn't a good thing. I would trade that. I would trade being popular for anything like that, because I just do not think it helps you in the long term.
Folks say he does it for publicity, does it to promote Dynamite. I'd love to know the stats of Dynamite viewership if he didn't tweet that compared to if he did. I think it'd be very similar. I can't imagine a lot of people would tweet. No, I can't imagine a lot of people would watch Dynamite because he slid off Jinder Mahal on Twitter. Mm-hmm. I bet if anything, it would do the opposite. If anything, it will promote Raw more than it will promote Dynamite.
I think Raw's views will go up this week just because of this. And I don't think
I can imagine. I think his segment with Seth Rollins was more than the full Dynamite with the full AEW combined or something like that.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
And that's another point. That's another point I want to touch on, because I found it really hard this week to watch all 4 shows on AEW. I think I text you about this as well. with 2 hours of Dynamite, 2 hours of Collision, you've got an hour of Rampage, and then you throw in an hour of Battle of the Belts. Now, there's good matches in every show, and there are, but it's 6 hours of content, and it's a lot of it is featuring the same people. And there's no, I've realised this kind of trying to watch. I haven't watched Battle of the Belts yet, but there's a lot less continuity than what there should be. Like there's like, for example, Anna Jay's in a storyline where she's a heel in Dynamite, and then she's a babyface in Rampage, without any all the explanation is oh, she's paying tribute to Brody Lee. But what was the point in the Wednesday thing if that was what you were bound to? Because you knew this Brody Lee anniversary was coming, and Anna Jay, you can't have her as a heel in that show. So what was the point in the Dynamite thing? That's what I don't understand about the overall booking and the overall continuity. Or if you're going to have all these shows, fair enough, but I just don't. I can't follow it as much as I can WWE, and I'm not coming on here and being a total anti-AEW guy. So I'm not. 'Cause I think there's a lot of good stuff on it, but I just get confused sometimes. Like, why is Danhausen out with Hook and Orange Cassidy one week, and then the next week it's Best Friends and Chris Statlander? That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I think the best aspect of the WWE is the video packages and the sort of being able to recap what's going on.
Yeah.
AEW need to do something like that because I remember there was like feuds built on being the elite, which obviously isn't about anymore. But I didn't watch Being the Elite. Did you watch Being the Elite?
Only if there was a big kind of thing on it, if there was something in
Yeah,
Twitter
I
that
watched
was
the one
getting you.
after.
But
I watched the one
I
after
find
they
it very
turned after
tiresome.
All Out.
I find it very tiresome sometimes. Like,
yeah,
I just don't.
I mean,
And again, the Young Bucks are away for a month. There are, do you know what I mean? We thought, oh, they might come back as heels and they might be back as a faction and they might be looking towards something with Jericho. And then they're back and they're going to do the Sting Darby Allin retirement match. Now, I have no problem with that. I think that's a good way for Sting to go out. I think Sting's probably made that choice. But there's no explanation. They just turn up and you're supposed, right, why are the Young Bucks coming out? There's no continuity.
no, I think we'll find out why the Young Bucks are facing Sting and Darby next week on Dynamite. I think there'll be a promo thing. I think then we'll find out why the Young Bucks want to face them. But I don't. I think I can get why they've chose the Bucks. Sting wanted to pick. I think it's Sting that chose it, like you said. And a tag match is the best way to protect Sting. But I still think Sting Darby should have been the match.
Yeah.
Or Sting Flair, just for a laugh.
Be surprised. Yeah, that would be no, please no. But I wouldn't be surprised, like if maybe like a couple of weeks before that, like Darby, they have a match, they have something, because I do think that would be quite a good way. But again, I would have done something like that as well. We'll stick with the AEW because I think this is quite relevant to what we're going to talk about. We obviously had the New Japan event last night. I know, have you watched it yet?
I've seen clips on Twitter. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I just
would
watched the two main ones.
I would say watch the. I would say probably watch the Riddle tag team match as well, just for how ridiculous it comes across when he introduces the tag partner. I won't spoil it, but there was a big. Well, I want to say debut. There was a big return in some capacity in that event. We saw Jack Perry return to the wrestling business. Now, we were speaking about this off air. Jack Perry is back, rips up his AEW contract in the middle of the ring, and then has an armband around his arm. Basically, what was it saying? Like something to do with like
The scapegoat.
Yeah, the scapegoat.
Scapegoat
Now,
was on the armband.
I like the way they've done that. It's definitely a work. There's no doubt. He's not. There's no way that's real life, because that wouldn't happen. I think, and as I was saying off the air, in terms of keeping Jack Perry away, because Jack Perry's going to get booed at every AEW event he's at when he comes back, just because basically a lot of people, including myself, think if Jack Perry doesn't do what he does in All In, I don't think CM Punk's in WWE right now. But
no,
again, he has. I do like the way they're going down with this. Is that it's maybe a few months of try to get him improved as a heel, because I don't think he was there yet, and this is probably the way to do it. Have him as the anti AEW guy. He can use it in New Japan for a few months. then bring him back. You could be bringing back a far better wrestler. I do like the way they went with this. Actually, I'm looking forward to seeing how they build this.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it makes a lot more sense than him being the devil.
Yeah.
Like Cole being the devil and Perry turning up in New Japan makes a lot more sense.
Mm.
And I do like the way they've done it. I'd love to know why he thinks he's a scapegoat because he kept the job and Punk didn't. But I think that just maybe delusional heel type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the beard helps. Like he looks more like a heel now. He's
Yeah.
get a lot. Now he's getting very beardy, and yeah, turn up the contract stuff like that. I think I'm really intrigued how they going, and can they keep it going till Forbidden Door? In what
Yeah.
June,
Yeah.
July time, Forbidden Door.
Yeah.
I'm quite depends how they go. Obviously, it's that. Obviously, I think Tony can be working with New Japan on this. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know if they can last another 6, 7 months. Might be able to. Maybe they've done the thing. You know what WWE done to hold off Jimmy versus Jay? They put Jay on Raw.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a similar thing to that.
Yeah.
Keep him away from AEW for as long as possible before they do what Jack Perry MJF window
Yeah.
or because MJF might come whoever Mister maybe Hangman Mister AEW when you think about it.
Yeah.
Right, do
Yeah.
Mister AEW who is Hangman or Omega, someone like that, against Jack Perry
Yeah.
for Windows, I think quite good.
And it's
I don't think
protecting
he's
him in
not
a
a bad wrestler. He's
He's
far from a
not.
bad wrestler.
He's not. He's obviously he's been exposed the past few months though as a bit
Aye.
well a-hole behind the scenes. I think by the
Yeah.
sounds of it, but I think in a way to improve somebody, I think going to New Japan, I don't think it's going to do him any harm. But we did have some big returns last night at Hard to Kill TNA. We saw the return of Dolph Ziggler, now known as obviously his real name Nick Nemeth. He returned after the main event for Moose when Moose beat Alex Shelley to win the TNA World Championship. Dolph Ziggler, now known as Nick Nemeth. Again, I'm quite intrigued by him going. I think this is exactly. He's obviously done the New Japan bit as well with David Finlay. I just like to see what they're doing here. Again, we'll get into another couple of big returns, but Dolph Ziggler could be exactly the guy to kind of get TNA on the map because I think a lot of people, including myself, rave about how good Dolph Ziggler was, and he wasn't pushed very well in WWE throughout his time. But this is the perfect. I think AEW they got lost in the shuffle. I think here he's going to be probably one of the biggest stars.
Yeah, definitely. I agree what you're saying. You've seen like obviously Nick Nemeth, former Dolph Ziggler, Mustafa Ali turned up somewhere else as well. I think them going to not AEW is always a good thing because now it was the 2020, 2021 where they were releasing a bunch of guys. Everyone went automatically XTW, YTW, and just get boring after a while because AEWs get enough top wrestlers they don't need. They don't need anyone that get released, really. They just kept adding people and eventually end up with a bloated roster, which they still have, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I like him going to TNA. I also like the fact he'll probably work New Japan as well. Saw someone on Twitter give a shout Nick Nemeth Wrestler of the Year 2024.
Yeah,
which I don't think that's not the worst shout.
No.
I think if he does, maybe if he stays with New Japan or if he maybe works for Bindo, for example, which I could see happening. Maybe he does the odd AEW match, which could be fun. So yeah, I'm looking forward to his run this year because I love Dolph Ziggler was that cash-ins. I would say third best cash-in, maybe second best cash-in. I was up there with Seth and Edge for the Edge first one.
Yeah, I would say Seth in terms of surprise, but yeah, I was second. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, second or third. I think Edge is the first one with Edge is up there. But yeah, he hasn't. I like the run XD. I thought he done some good stuff with Breaker. But I'd like to see him v Breaker. Obviously, it's not possible. I'd like to see him versus heel Breaker now. I think Braun Breaker's improved dramatically since then. But yeah, I'm looking forward to his run in both TNA and I think he'll do some New Japan dates as well, which will be a lot of fun.
The women's match we saw. I think we're definitely seeing a departure, but we saw an interesting debut and an interesting name. Trinity Fatu, obviously formerly known as Naomi, looks to be going back to WWE, which I do think that's fairly acceptable. we did see somebody in the crowd. If you weren't Dana Brooke, now known by Ash by Elegance, again, this just looks like a Tony Storm ripoff to me. You're losing Naomi and bringing in Dana Brooke. Not exactly a
not the
brilliant
biggest upgrade
trade,
I've
is it?
seen in my life.
Nah. And I've nothing against Dana Brooke because I think she was one of those. She was pushed way too early in WWE, and she just never really found her feet. But I do think Naomi can come back in WWE and kind of do pretty well. I wouldn't be surprised if they do something with if she's kind of back, maybe at the Rumble, and they maybe push her as some sort of, like maybe have her as a kind of try and go after the tag team with somebody, the tag team titles with somebody. I don't know who, but I would keep her away from the bloodline. Jade possibly could maybe do that.
I think Jade, according to Triple H, Jade still needs some work.
Yeah.
So sticking a tag team with Naomi or Trinity could
some...
to give the tag belts a bit of maybe do a storyline about how Trinity left. Might be difficult to do because Sasha's not there. But you
she was in. She was in. Did you see?
Like,
did you see her and Bailey try to hide themselves last night? You see a picture?
Yeah, it was the worst disguise. Did you see the picture got about that could have been Triple H and AJ Styles?
I thought it was. Did they not? Was there not one that was going about that Punk was there too?
Yeah, I think Punk. I think Ace Steel was a producer of the show.
Yeah,
so maybe Punk was there maybe just looking at Ace Steel. But I saw one that was Triple H and AJ Styles, which sounded well. I don't know why they'd be there if they're not on the show, but unless they're just there to put Naomi in the back of a car and drive her.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but it does obviously kind of like Naomi coming back in. I don't think, like, for example, I don't think she's a contender to win the Royal Rumble. She's in it. I firmly believe that I think the Royal Rumble winners are set in stone. I think it's Punk and Bailey. That's where I'm going.
I think Cody. I think it's Cody and Bailey.
It's either. I don't think the Rock's in it for a start. If the Rock's in it, he wins it. But again, we were talking about this earlier. It's either Punk. It can only be either Punk or Cody. It can't be anybody.
One of the two.
It can't be anybody else. Do you know what I mean? It can't be. Gunther's been mentioned.
I think the Mania matches are set in stone. The Mania matches are set in stone, but it's how you get there.
Yeah.
Because I've always said the winner of the Rumble in kayfabe, the winner of the Rumble has to want to beat Roman's 1,000-day reign, because you've got the option of beating in kayfabe the best champion of the modern era. They put it since Bruno in the 60s, and surely anyone would want to beat that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having Punk win it and then automatically go into Seth, I don't think, especially because Punk's called out Roman already. That's why I think Cody kind of has to win it. And then I think we'll get on. I don't know if you want to speak about Australia now.
It's probably a perfect segue into Australia, Scott. Obviously, we're hearing Punk has been confirmed to be a part of the Elimination Chamber event, and Dave Meltzer put out that it's very unlikely we get Roman versus Rock at Elimination Chamber, and that Roman's not there at all, and by all reports. So I find that very interesting. What do you do with Elimination Chamber? Because I obviously think there's a certain Australian star who should be the main event, but Punk, who does Punk work with?
I think what I just said. I think Cody wins the Rumble, and the only way to get to Seth is put him in the chamber. No, I don't know if a Punk to get Seth is put Punk in the chamber.
Yeah.
And I also think there's more talent on Raw for the chamber than there is on SmackDown.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Raw's scene, you've got Nakamura, you get Drew, you get Zayn, you get Punk. So I think there's a lot more in Raw than you stick Finn in there. Maybe Finn and Priest, bit of Judgment Day, Dissension or whatever. Yeah. Bit of fun B story. Even someone like a Bronson Reed, sorry.
I thought you were going to say Brodus Clay.
Or a Johnny Gargano.
Get Brodus Clay
I was going to say, not him. Please, for the love of God, not him. Big Tyrus, bring him in.
Yeah.
Bronson Reed or a Gargano or something like that. Stick them in the chamber. I think that could be fun. Yeah. I think Raw's roster is more suited to a chamber than SmackDown, which is another reason why I think Cody should win the Rumble.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see that route. I think Rhea main events could be Liv, it could be Becky, it could even be whether you have like somebody like a Jade or something, just I don't know what they do with Rhea. I think Rhea has to main event that event because basically it's Elimination Chamber, it's in Australia, and she is the star of. I mean, she's been the star.
Aye.
She deserves that kind of limelight. Roman versus Rock is interesting though because I think me and you are definitely in the bandwagon that it should be Roman and Cody at WrestleMania, but Rock's kind of come in and I think as much as I love The Rock and as much as I think he obviously brings eyes to the product, he's just causing confusion.
Yeah. I think it's more intrigue than confusion. Like last year, it was very much whether is it Jay that faces Roman, is it Sammy that faces Roman, is it Cody? And I think they eventually went with Cody, and I think that was the right one after the result of the match, but
Yeah.
that's a different something else. But I think it was the right opponent. It was Cody, but I think sorry, I with I lost my train of thought. What was I talking? What was I saying?
Yeah, talk about Cody.
Yeah, I think Cody was the right opponent last year, but this year I also think Cody's the right opponent again.
Mhm.
And do you save Rock for SummerSlam? Do you do Roman Rock at SummerSlam? Do you because folk have my only issue with the Rock and Roman at SummerSlam is I've got the unpopular opinion that Roman Rock needs the belt. A lot of folks say no, it doesn't need the belt. It's about head of the table, tribal chief, whatever. But if you go back to the very start of Roman's reign, all he spoke about was how the belt means he can feed his family. If you look at his Jey Uso feud, and even the second Jey Uso feud at SummerSlam last year with that not great match, but it was tribal combat. It was Jey being able to beat Roman to become head of the table with the belt on the line. I do think it needs the belt about. I think being head of the family, the Roman the can't speak the Samoan dynasty being head of the Samoan dynasty needs the belt to be head of the table.
Yeah.
So I think Roman Rock does need the belt. So that's why I think Chamber was the best place for it. But yeah, if it's not happening, then I don't know when it'll happen.
I would personally be okay if they went, right, we're going to save this till SummerSlam. But does that mean Roman's beating Cody again? And I don't think that's the right way to go because you can't do it. You can't. The whole thing with Cody is obviously the way they've done it is this is the story that he's going to finish the story. I think a lot of people will lose interest if it goes on another year.
I think folk have already started to lose interest.
Possibly that as well, but I think you're going to even lose people even further. I'm maybe of the different train of thought that I don't think it needs the belt because I think it's been built enough. But I always go back to what he says about what he said. I don't know if you ever watched Young Rock, but he says on it there's a thing where it's a young Roman Reigns and they're having a bit of a scrap, like a kind of play scrap watching WrestleMania, and Roman says, "I want to wrestle you, Dwayne," and he goes, that can only happen at WrestleMania." And we things like that kind of clog my wheel. Like they're only going to do this at WrestleMania, and it's the dream. It is a dream match. It is. It's as you say, probably the greatest champion we've had in a long time against probably the biggest mainstream star to come from wrestling. So it needs to be WrestleMania, I think. But does it wait another year? I don't know. I think
you can't do it over 2 nights because there's folk doing Roman barely works 2 nights a year and 2 nights a weekend.
Yeah. I don't think that I wouldn't go down that route as well. And I think Punk Rollins has to main event night 1, and I think Roman Cody has to main event night 2. I don't see another
Or
alternative.
you could spin it off. I just had a thought there. I think might have said this to you before. You could spin it off as if you do. Let's say for example you do Rock Roman 1 at night 1, Roman Cody night 2, whatever. You could spin it off again to a Punk Rock feud. You could do Punk going, "You stole my main event again," and then you do Punk Rock at SummerSlam.
Yeah.
If you've got Rock for a couple of shows a year, you could easily do Punk Rock at SummerSlam because there's a lot in it. There's a lot you can build off. You can build off the WrestleMania 29. You stole my main event. You could build off if going above what I just said. You could build off this year. you stole my main event again. Dwayne's came in and stole my main event. You could spin it off into the psychopath Punk, who's scared that everyone's going to steal his spotlights, which is because there's nothing better. Face Punk's good because he sells merch and he's quite funny, but there's nothing better than heel Punk.
Yeah, I just think there'd be a wee bit of behind the scenes chaos if Punk came back after 10 years. And the reason he left in the first place is why it happens to him again. I just think that would be the weirdest thing in the world. But yeah, I mean, it's probably something. I do think it's something we're going to. Like, I think this road to WrestleMania is going to be unlike anything we've had in a long time because there's so many different what ifs. But I think it's a good time to go into the what ifs of wrestling history that we've got. We've kind of promoted this for a wee while in terms of like there's a lot of things that we think could have happened differently. I think we both fancy ourselves as a bit of kind of Vince Russo's. Like I think we both like to be quite kind of book things long term. But the biggest what ifs in wrestling history, how different would wrestling have been if these things had happened? We've got three each. There's more there if we agree on some. You go first. What's the biggest one you would say? What's the one you would say wrestling could have been altered in the biggest way if this happened?
What if Jericho didn't want New Japan? If Jericho didn't have that match with Omega, I don't think we get AEW. And therefore, what happens? I think because that's the big match that Tony watched. He watched that and All In and thought, I can build something with this. And because he had Jericho being first AEW champion was kind of criticised at the time. But looking back, I think that was the best way to make AEW sort of big in the mainstream, having someone the size of Jericho as your first champ. So I think if Jericho decided to stay with WWE and not work New Japan, I don't think we get AEW.
Did that? So he went to New Japan before All In, didn't he? I'm getting dates mixed up, but I'm sure he did. He must have.
I think that was the start of 2018. He went to New Japan and All In. It was All In.
All In was September 2018. So yeah, that would have been right.
Yeah, I believe so.
That would have been right. I do think that could be right because I don't think AEW was big enough. Could you have got a deal in TNT if you didn't have somebody like Jericho?
Probably not.
I don't think so. I don't because I do think Jericho was the big one. I do think he was the.
Yeah.
They put him first champion.
I think Tony said many times he had a list of 5 folk he wanted. He wanted Omega. He wanted the Bucks. No, he wanted Omega. He wanted Jericho. He wanted Cody. He wanted someone else. And he wanted Punk. Punk was on his list of 5 folk he first wanted to sign when he thought of AEW. And I don't think you get Punk if you don't get Jericho.
No.
And I don't think you get AEW if you don't get Jericho.
Yeah. No, I think
it could have been a thing on Fight. It could have been just another indie. But Jericho gave it a TV deal. Jericho made it what it is today. And I don't think you get that if it doesn't work as much with Omega at New Japan.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely fair. I do think it was. I can't remember if it was Tony, if it was somebody that was working for the company at the time. They said they needed a star. Moxley coming in at the Double or Nothing was another big moment as well because that was I think that they obviously must have had the TNT deal at that point because Dynamite debuts not long after that. But these guys jumping over that we didn't have that. We didn't have. And Jericho, we can certainly question his character recently and question has he been there too long, has he hung on too long? But he was probably one of the biggest names possible at that point.
Yeah.
I don't think like Punk would have done it. I'm not sure even somebody like see if they'd said right, we're getting Danielson from the start. I'm not sure he's a big enough name to.
Although I don't know because Danielson was always for Danielson was always rumored to work All In from the very beginning because he wasn't cleared by WWE but was cleared by everyone else. He get cleared in March, I believe.
Yeah.
and then All In was September. So I think he was always rumoured to work All In. And I don't think this might be another this is sort of a byproduct of that one. I don't think Danielson gets cleared if All In's not a thing.
Possibly.
I think he got cleared by WWE because they were worried about him going to All In.
Yeah. And I think that's as well, like, maybe another one like Randy. Remember, Randy was using AEW as a bargaining tool as well.
Yeah.
That would have been an interest if Randy Orton had went to AEW. Would the
Yeah.
backstage stuff have happened? Because I do think probably there's nobody in wrestling over the past 20 years that's been involved in many backstage kerfuffles as Randy Orton, but
No.
they were all when he was young. Now,
Yeah.
I think somebody like Randy Orton's exactly. But then again, you could say it's Jericho in there and it's still happening. So, but I think Randy would have been another big moment as well.
Yeah.
But my first one is probably, I think the biggest one in wrestling history. I don't think there's anything bigger than this because I think this would been the all-time greatest storyline in wrestling history. What if for the WCW invasion in 2001, we had the NWO, we had Flair, we had Hogan, we had Nash, we had Goldberg, we had Sting. That would have been the biggest storyline in wrestling history because the problem with the invasion was it was there. It was the story wrote itself, but there was two problems. Is that obviously the guys that were in WCW were getting paid to sit about, which again they weren't gonna buy out those contracts, but the XFL was also a thing at that point. So this storyline, which had so much potential because of what was going on out with wrestling, they couldn't really put as much into it, and that's why it did become Austin being part of WCW, which made no sense to begin with. It was WWF was Stone Cold Steve Austin, and it turned into a McMahon thing. Stephanie McMahon running ECW, which I still think is the stupidest direction ever. You could have anybody running ECW. You could have brought Heyman in. I still think my biggest, if I was to go back and book something and rebook something, can you imagine SummerSlam 2001, the NWO interfering in the main event, and you've got standing at the Titantron, Eric Bischoff, and it just sets up a whole journey to WrestleMania. That would have been huge.
I think that you could have. There's two ways you could have went about it. You could have either, because they were still on the contract with WCW, you could have bought their contracts out, which is a lot of money. But I think if you buy the contracts out, you probably make the money back.
Yeah, I think you do as well.
You'd probably make the money back, or you could wait a year. You could have very easily waited a year for their contract to expire, because they weren't doing much anyway. So if you waited a year and brought in your Hogans, your Nashes, your Flairs, etc., your Halls, your Goldbergs, whatever, and brought them in, you could have just waited a year. I think I heard there's a reason why they waited a year, or why they didn't wait a year, and I can't remember it. But there was some I heard, I was listening to a podcast about it, and there was definitely a reason. I can't exactly remember what it is. But I think, if you either wait a year or you buy their contracts, you get, because the invasion made a hell of a lot of money anyway.
Yeah.
And if you have the invasion with the money they made, plus your five biggest stars from WCW, you had the NWO, Goldberg, and Bischoff, obviously chuck a Sting in there as well. I think you very easily double your money, easily.
But you think about Invasion. Invasion was, I still think it is the biggest non-WrestleMania buy rate in wrestling history. You could have had one of them every month if you'd had these guys and you'd had these stories. You would have had that every month. So you would have made the money back, and then you would have had this brilliant blow-off WrestleMania where it could have been, you know what I mean, best of 11 matches. Whoever wins the most gets 100% control, something like that. Can you imagine how good that would be?
I also think that ECW being involved complicated.
That was another thing as well. That was another thing.
You could have just not had ECW in it. That would have made it a lot more simpler. Because you got to the point you were thinking, who's WWF fighting?
Mm-hmm.
Who's invading them? Because you've got the Alliance, but then you've got the McMahons with the Alliance, and then it ended up just being McMahon versus McMahon, which you're gonna get in. So WWF story surrounded by McMahons. When it's maybe an invasion, it didn't make a lot of sense for anyone involved.
No, I would have been very much. I still think that would have been the biggest storyline. But we'll move into your second one. What you got?
What if Roman worked Mania 36?
Oh,
Because he
difficult.
didn't because of the pandemic.
Pandemic. It was
But
meant to be him and Goldberg,
let's
wasn't
say
it?
the pandemic still happened, obviously. But Roman decided, no, I think it's safe enough for me to work it. Because we probably don't get the tribal chief.
I don't think
We
I don't
don't
think
get
he
this
turns heel.
1,000-year reign we've had. I think it's I think that might be my biggest one looking back if Roman
Yeah,
did it work Mania 36. Because I don't think we don't get the bloodline, we don't get this great story we've had, but it's kind of tailed off now. But the year of 2022 was something special for the bloodline. And even the beginning of 2023 was unbelievable.
and
Yeah,
I
if Roman
think
did
as
work at
well.
Mania 36, I think we're not. I think we're looking at a very, very different WWE.
I think we are as well. I think that is an interesting one because it would have beat Goldberg. It would have
Yeah,
been. Do you know what I mean? It would have just been back to babyface. They maybe would have turned him heel eventually, but
but I don't think it would have the impact after he returned
I
and
don't
stuff.
think it does either because I think that because there was no fans. Remember, everybody was shocked when he returned. Remember when he
Yeah,
returned at SummerSlam? Everybody was shocked, and then you had, I think it was 5 days later, he was on
Heyman.
camera and Paul Heyman was there, and that just turned it from there. And you were thinking, right, this is good. This
Yeah,
is already going to work. And it took a while. It did. It took a while to really get invested. I still maintain the main event against Edge and Bryan. I still think it's probably one of the WrestleMania main events. It's maybe because of the circumstances that I think about the least. Just
I
because it
really
was,
like Brian. I remember Brian said he hated that match,
I just
which was
think,
strange because I really enjoyed it.
I think that whole WrestleMania. I look back with that WrestleMania less fondly than the year before, the one with
Yeah, the
no
year before
fans.
was better actually. The Firefly Funhouse. I don't know
Yeah,
what you actually. We haven't spoken about Firefly Funhouse, but
but
I thought it
yeah,
was amazing.
yeah. But only, as you
Yeah,
say, it would only have worked on that circumstances.
yeah.
Now,
You couldn't have like 50. You couldn't have 60,000 folk watching a
no,
telly for
no,
50
you
minutes. It
couldn't.
wouldn't have worked.
You couldn't, and that obviously leads to another one as well. Like, what would have happened? What would have happened? Like, what Bray Wyatt? I still maintain when Bray comes back as the Fiend in the against Rollins. That's that ridiculous. What if the Fiend had won the Hell in a Cell instead of winning it at Crown Jewel? Would that have changed something? Because I think it had to be that point. I think the Fiend was ruined from that point on. When he looked
I
when he
think
didn't win
Goldberg
it,
were in the Fiend more than Hell
that
in a
is.
Cell did.
I think though it ruined the mystique of the Fiend to me. That
I
whole
think
Hell in a
he
Cell
might.
thing.
I think one of the biggest what ifs with the Fiend is the Miz feud. Don't know if you remember, he faced
Yeah.
Bray Wyatt and not the Fiend at
Hmm.
I think it was TLC,
Yeah.
and I was really intrigued going into that because we hadn't seen Bray Wyatt wrestle since the 2 year before. It'd always been the Fiend, but Bray Wyatt wrestling as Bray Wyatt, I thought would have been quite interesting, but they kind of really didn't do anything with it. Yeah, the home invasion stuff, which had been seen before, him putting dolls in his Wayne's crib was strange,
Hmm.
but I, I think, I think the Fiend. I still go back. I still watch that entrance against Finn Balor a lot.
Yeah.
That entrance against Finn Balor was something special.
Yeah. Yeah.
The sort of
Absolutely.
the music that's sort of been swallowed up by it was his old theme, but it kind of was a creepier, slower version of it. He had the lantern with his head. Thought it was something special. But yeah,
Yeah.
they kind of made an ass of it with Hell in a Cell and then Goldberg. The Firefly Funhouse match kind of saved it. And then you went to the Braun feud, which was bad.
Remember that match, the Swamp match? Wow, my word.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Alexa Bliss turned up for some reason.
I didn't mind
Still don't
that
know
at the
why.
start, but then it just got ridiculous. It did, and the Randy
Yeah.
stuff I thought was poor. But right, my second one, because I think the whole wrestling world changes if this happens. What if Vince McMahon goes to jail in 1993? The WCW win the Monday Night Wars? The WWF go out of business? Does Vince McMahon try something else a lot earlier? I think that I do think this is a big what if because it was close.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to unpack with this one. Because that's a lot. Because if he does go to jail, does who takes over? Is it
It was
Steph?
maybe
Is
it
it
was
Linda?
maybe it was maybe Jerry Jarrett. Remember, there was a big thing. Well, this was before either of us were born, but there was a thing going about Jerry Jarrett was asked by Vince, if I go to jail, you need to take it over. And I think the whole wrestling world changes in that point, because I think the WWF go down the route of, we're going into a more kind of NWA thing. Do we get the Attitude Era? Do we get do we even get the Monday Night Wars? Did WCW get lazy as well at that point because the other product's not that good? Does Hulk Hogan go to WCW? Does Hulk Hogan return to WWF? There's so many things here.
I think with Vince going to jail, Vince had a lot of sort of people about him that I think if WWF would have been fine. Maybe not fine, but maybe not like it wouldn't have went up in pieces. You had like your Jerry Jarrett was there, obviously. You had Jim Cornette, who was round about that
Bill
time
Watts
as
might
well.
have been there at the time as well. I think Bill Watts would have something to do. That would have been interesting. But
Bruce Hart probably would have came in and took over because he's Bruce
something
Hart.
like that. Something like that.
Bruce Hart would have just went, "That's me. I'm running it."
Yeah, it'd have been something like that. I do think it would have changed the whole Monday Night Wars thing. I don't think we get the Monday Night Wars if Vince goes to jail, because I think it was Vince who thought, right, this is where these guys are. They've got my top star. They're on Monday night. I need to kill Ted Turner. I need to kill this whole thing.
Yeah.
And it was Vince that was the reason for that. So I do think that's probably a show in itself. What if that happens? But right, what's your third one?
Yeah. This is one that was brought to me the other day. It's a clip was going about on Twitter. What if Brock Lesnar shot on Taker and he wasn't actually meant to beat the streak? Because you heard it's that Paul Heyman clip from Inside the Ropes. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's more than that was.
He talks about he's like, I can't remember the actual quote, but it's something to do with there's only one man that could decide if the streak was broken.
Brock Lesnar does what Brock Lesnar wants to do. That's it.
Yeah. Is that so what? Because then you think, what does Brock get punished? Does Brock get fired because he wasn't meant to win? What happens with Brock? What happens with Taker? Because obviously Taker would concuss. Taker was done during that match.
Yeah, he would have been able to stop
what
it.
If he wasn't meant? What if Brock wasn't actually meant to win?
And it's brilliant, that whole argument, because the music doesn't play, if you remember. It takes them about 5 minutes to put up the graphic.
The bell doesn't ring, from what I remember.
I can't. Yeah, probably.
I think they've edited in the bell ringing, because I don't think the bell actually rung.
I remember watching that live in bed. I think, was I in bed? Yeah, I was. And I, for 5 minutes, just couldn't believe what I was watching, because we've been so conditioned to take a winning. We had, and I just think that whole night, that WrestleMania is still one of the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd say it's top whole, 3.
It is, yeah, it is.
X7, 30, and I think 39 is my third best Mania. Yeah, maybe even second.
Yeah, I like 31 as well. I thought 31, with how poor the build-up was, that whole event, I thought was brilliant. But I just remember for 5 minutes, and I am that guy, the mean guy. I just couldn't believe they actually did it, because I just thought it would go forever, and I still think it should have went on forever. I don't think Brock needed it. Still don't think Brock needed it.
Who did? That's a question for you. Who should have broke it? If
Roman could have done it, but I think you had to turn him heel after it.
Yeah, I've got a name. What if John Cena? What if John Cena done it by cheating?
Could have, yeah.
Because I think a John Cena. You think if you want to go crowd heat, I think a John Cena heel turn probably gets cheated by a lot of people. Yeah. Because he's John Cena. But if John Cena cheats to break the streak, then I don't think he gets cheered. I think if you want maximum crowd heat, have John Cena cheating to break the streak. Yeah, I think so. I think Roman would have been the one for me. Maybe even at the Mania 32 in Dallas. Yeah, like that would have been cool instead of the Triple H match. Jesus, still going on, I think. And it could have worked. And you can argue Roman, but obviously Roman probably didn't need it either because of what he goes on to do. But there's so many what ifs in that. But right, this is my third and final one. This has always intrigued me ever since it was announced. What if Mark Jindrak was in Evolution instead of Batista?
Would
It probably
Batista
changes the movie world more than it changes the wrestling
probably
world when you think
does,
about
but
it.
it probably does because does Batista become what he became? I don't think he does. I don't think he's anywhere
No,
close to it. Does Batista going to be Drax the Destroyer? Does Evolution get remembered as fondly as it does?
probably because you had Flair and Triple H.
But Mark Jindrak?
I think with Evolution, I think do you have this is Mark Jindrak that does the famous thumbs down scene? I can't see. I can't
I can't
picture it.
see it either. I can't see it either.
Does
You mi-
Batista just stay as Deacon Batista as Yvonne Dudley's sidekick?
I don't think Batista's in the business for anywhere near what he was. Because he was
No.
in the business for a short time when you consider it. He joined in 2002, left in 2010, had a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
I don't think he would have been in it. He would have still been something, but I don't think Batista's
At the
anywhere.
look that Vince liked, so he probably would have been just a steady mid carder, but he wouldn't have been what he is. He
No,
probably wouldn't. He wouldn't be the movie star he is today,
no.
and he probably wouldn't be the best one of the. I think Batista's incredibly underrated as well because he doesn't really get spoken about in your high end people. He mainly just gets spoken about the wrestler that does movies. But I think he's. Although when you think about his last match was that Hell in a Cell match with Triple H. Do you remember that? 35.
Was that Hell in a Cell?
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Wait,
Was
was
it?
it Hell in a Cell?
I don't think it was Hell in a Cell. Was that the one he falls in the entrance?
Yeah, that was. Yeah, that wasn't Hell in a Cell, was it?
No, I
I
don't
don't know
think
why I
so.
thought it was Hell in a
I don't
Cell.
think so.
No, and then it was just them flicking each other's piercings for half an hour.
Yeah.
And Flair turned up.
And the whole build
He's
up to
Flair.
that was weird because it came from like SmackDown 1000, where he just
Yeah.
says, "You didn't beat
No, was
me."
it not? Was it not Ric Flair? It was a Ric Flair celebration type
Yeah,
thing.
but did it not start with him having an Evolution reunion and he said, "You've done everything in this business but beat me"?
Except beat me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I do remember that. Yeah.
But I do. Do you remember? You ever read the thing? I can't remember who it is. The whole thing with Batista was he was meant to be the product of rape.
Yes,
You
I
ever
do
seen
remember
that?
this.
Like,
I remember hearing about it. It was like 10. I was reading about it was like 10 pitches that Vince McMahon turned down or something like that,
yeah.
and that was one of them.
God.
It's like there was Vince. We could have video and stupid Vince ideas.
Because yeah, the one that always was what Hiding Right. I'm not going to say what it was, but what Hiding Right was meant to be. If you've ever seen that, you ever seen that?
It rings a bell. Have you
Yeah,
seen the?
I'll tell you
Seen the
off
one
air.
with Steph get pregnant?
Yeah, that's
He
probably
wanted
the
Shane
worst.
to be the dad,
I think it was him
and
at
then he
first, was
said,
it not?
I think it was Shane, and then it was him.
God,
Because he suggested Shane. I think it must have been Bruce. Bruce went, Vince, no. And then she went, no. And Vince went, what if it was me? Like, fucking hell, Vince.
there's a brilliant clip in the McMahon DVD where they're talking. I think Stephanie's pregnant at the time, and Triple H is being interviewed about it, and he says he's already been asked if he could put a camera in there and sell it in pay-per-view for the birth. And that's the sort of thing he would have done, but
He's off his head.
yeah, but
You ever had the story? This is going off the weird random stories. You ever heard the story about how Jericho found out he was going to be undisputed champ?
and
They're sitting in catering,
yeah,
and Vince, who's Vince talking to?
I think it's
Vince is talking to
Undertaker.
someone.
I think it's Undertaker.
Yeah, it might be Taker. And then he goes, I can't believe I'm putting the belt on Jericho. And that's how Jericho found out. Jesus.
But yeah, I mean it's
We spoke about Tony Khan was weird. Bloody hell.
but I don't think Vince McMahon would ever go on Twitter and do anything like Tony Khan did, and I think that's probably makes Vince McMahon the better businessman. But yeah, I mean those are a lot of what ifs. Send your what ifs in, and we'll maybe even talk about them in the next show. If you've any what ifs that you think could have changed the future of wrestling, then please let us know. But we're going to have to wrap up there, Scott. It's been a pleasure as always, mate. Thank you very much, and we'll be back next week where we'll do a Royal Rumble preview.